Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Renegade Immortal episode number 88 based on novel. So let's start. The library of the Soul Refining Mountain wasn't large, it only had 3 floors. Looking from a distance, this library seemed very normal. When Wang Lin entered, his eyes focused on an old man sitting inside. The old man was very close to the nascent soul stage, he was only 1 step away. The old man's face was yellow, his body was skinny, and he looked very tired. When he noticed that someone had entered, he opened his eyes and said, "Token." Wang Lin handed over his token. The old man looked at it and said, "You can look around as you wish, but you're not allowed to go to the 3rd floor. The time limit is 3 days." Wang Lin nodded and entered the library. Looking at the 1st floor, there were rows of shelves with jades, bamboo carvings, and even stone carvings. Wang Lin's eyes swept past them. There was a wide variety of techniques here and they covered just about everything. There were techniques he already knew and techniques he had never seen before. Only, there was nothing about refining a soul flag. After making his way through the 1st floor, he entered the 2nd floor. The number of techniques on the 2nd floor was lower than the 1st. They were scattered around the room with descriptions of each technique. Wang Lin spread out his divine sense and found the 4 words, Soul Flag Production Method. He picked up the jade to check and then frowned. This jade did indeed contain the method to creating a soul flag, but it was exactly the same as what everyone else did. If the soul refining sect really used this method, there was no way they would be as famous as they were now. After carefully searching through the 2nd floor, Wang Lin, who had found nothing he needed, looked toward the 3rd floor. He didn't do anything reckless and returned to the skinny elder. He clasped his hands and asked, "Senior, why can't I go up to the 3rd floor?" The old man yawned. He looked at Wang Lin and said, "You can't go up, so you can't go up. What's with all this nonsense?" Wang Lin's eyes became cold as he stared at the old man. The old man frowned. He muttered something and then impatiently said, "You don't need to stare. You want to look for the method to make the soul flag, right? I can tell you that it isn't here, and it isn't in the 3rd floor either. There are only 10 pieces of jade with the method to make the soul flag. If you want it, then go steal them. See, that cave over there has one. If you can steal it, you can learn it." Wang Lin looked toward where the old man was pointing. There was indeed a cave there. There aren't any rules in the soul refining sect. If you have the ability to kill, kill. If you want anything, steal it, and if you like any women, take them. If you don't have any ability, then find others who have no ability to cultivate together so you can protect yourself. No rules. One can do as he wishes. Wang Lin let out a faint smile. This soul refining sect was indeed interesting. Wang Lin waved his hand and a giant invisible hand grabbed the old man. The old man was startled, but he let out a laugh. The impatient look on his face disappeared and was replaced with battle intent. "Good. Good. In these past 100 years, you are the 5th person to attack me. Okay, I'll play with you." With that, he moved his body to break free. Wang Lin's eyes became cold. He casually waved his hand and the old man was thrown by a powerful force toward the wall. The old man's head was spinning from the collision. He was about to let out an angry roar when he was picked up and thrown again. Bang! The continuous collisions caused the old man to cough out blood. Seeing that Wang Lin was going to continue, he quickly shouted, "Grandfather, please stop. I'm willing to call you grandfather. If you throw me anymore, this old body will break." Wang Lin released his grip. The old man fell to the ground and got up after a while. He let out a bitter smile and said, "Junior apprentice brother, with your strength, just go steal what you want. As long as you don't kill too many people, no one is going to bother you." Wang Lin looked at the old man and left. Shortly after, he arrived before the cave the old man had pointed at before. There were some restrictions outside the cave. Wang Lin spread out his divine sense and found that there was a middle-aged man cultivating inside. There was a side room with 2 female cultivators cultivating inside as well. Wang Lin's eyes lit up and his right hand moved, creating many illusionary restrictions. With a bang, all of the restrictions outside the cave collapsed along with the door. The old man in the distance shivered. He thought that the soul refining mountain had gained another person that couldn't be offended. The middle-aged man let out an angry roar because his cave was destroyed. He flew out in a ray of red light and without a word took out a small, purple flag. Hundreds of souls flew out of the flag. There were males and females among these souls. They let out bursts of sharp shrills and charged toward Wang Lin. "Destroying my cave, you're courting death." Wang Lin remained calm. The person who charged out of the cave wasn't at the nascent soul stage, he was at the peak of the late stage of core formation like the elder from the library. However, the soul flag in his hand was a bit different. Wang Lin could clearly see a golden line on the soul flag, and the souls it released had a black aura around them. This was very different from the souls of normal soul flags that looked like they would dissipate if the wind blew on them. These hundreds of souls were full of energy, and a few of them gave off pressure no weaker than a normal core formation cultivator's. Growth. Wang Lin's eyes lit up because he saw what was different from this soul flag. The souls inside this soul flag had the ability to keep growing. Wang Lin's eyes lit up and he reached out with his hand. The soul flag flew out of the middle-aged man's hand and into his. He wiped the divine sense from it and imprinted his own, then he immediately felt a sense of harmony within his soul. With a wave of the soul flag, the souls that were charging at him were all absorbed by it. The core formation cultivator was dumbfounded. He sucked in a breath of cold air and immediately took out a black jade. He placed it on the ground, backed away, and shouted, "I admit defeat, I admit defeat. The cave is yours, the jade is yours, and the flag is yours too. I have 2 cultivation concubines as well, I haven't touched one of them yet. You can have them too. I'm giving everything to you, so according to the rules, you can't kill me." With that, he quickly backed away. Wang Lin looked at this person. He didn't attack but waved his hand. The black jade flew into his hand and he carefully examined it. At this moment, 2 women walked out of the cave. Both of them were very beautiful and calm. They acted like this was completely normal and just quietly stood there. This is the real method for making the soul flags, however, it seems this isn't complete. Wang Lin withdrew his divine sense and frowned. One of the 2 women, she was wearing a blue dress, saw Wang Lin frown after reading the jade and asked, "Senior apprentice brother, did you notice that the method seems incomplete?" Wang Lin raised his head to look at the 2 of them. Both of them were at the early stage of core formation. Wang Lin asked, "Why is it like this?" The blue-robed woman quickly said, "Senior apprentice brother must be Qing Mu, the winner of the recent outer sect disciple competition. I, your junior apprentice sister, am called Xu Yun." Xu Yun greets senior apprentice brother. As for the reason the soul flag is incomplete, it is because it is split into 3 parts. Each part matches the name of the 3 mountains: soul refining, soul extracting, and soul sealing. By combining the 3 methods together, you will get the real soul flag production method. Wang Lin's eyes lit up. He put the jade away and looked at the cave. This place didn't meet his standards. He spread out his divine sense and flew toward the bottom of the mountain. The 2 women were startled. They looked at each other before quickly following Wang Lin. It was very dangerous to be alone in the soul refining sect. Unless your cultivation was very powerful, you needed to rely on others. This was why there were many groups. Once you lose a battle, you must hand over everything. Once you handed everything over, the other person wasn't allowed to kill you or else the elders would interfere. These irrational rules made it so that no one felt like they belonged in the soul refining sect. However, no one knew why the soul refining sect did this. The senior apprentice brother they relied on was scared away by Wang Lin, so they would naturally need to follow Wang Lin. As Wang Lin flew, he frowned. He turned around and shouted, "Don't follow me." He coldly looked at the 2 women and turned around to leave. The woman next to Xu Yun anxiously asked, "Senior apprentice sister, what should we do?" Xu Yun stomped her feet and snorted. "What else can we do? If he won't let us follow him, then we won't follow. Once he finds a cave, we will open our cave near him. Maybe the others will give him face and not bother our cultivation." Near the bottom of the mountain, Wang Lin's eyes locked onto a cliff. He pointed at the cliff and a flying sword charged at it. It only took a few moments for a cave to form. After Wang Lin flew into the cave, he casually sent out a restriction and sealed the cave. Inside the cave, Wang Lin's gaze locked onto the wall. The reason he chose this spot was because it was closest to the spirit vein. Although he couldn't absorb the power of the spirit vein like before, he could still borrow its power. His body disappeared, and when he reappeared, he was before the main spirit vein under the soul refining mountain. After sitting down in the lotus position, he spread out his divine sense. What he found startled him. In the deepest part of the spirit vein, There was massive black gas that blocked out all divine senses. Spiritual energy from the spirit vein was being absorbed by the black gas. Wang Lin's divine sense was at the edge of the black gas. He was able to detect screams of souls that would occasionally appear inside the black gas. It stops divine sense? Wang Lin looked around and immediately found that there was a restriction around the black gas. It was because of this restriction that his divine sense couldn't enter. After looking at it for a bit, Wang Lin's eyes became focused. This? Could this be an ancient soul restriction? Wang Lin's heart trembled. Ancient soul restrictions were the most rare of ancient restrictions. This restriction used a soul as its medium. Not only did the ancient restriction change in a strange fashion, it was also much more powerful. Normal restrictions could be seen as dead objects, they were like locks that needed certain keys to open. But a soul restriction wasn't the same. It could be considered a living thing. In reality, it was a soul fragment that was being kept alive as a formation. Wang Lin's eyes lit up. After pondering for a while, he disappeared. When he reappeared, he was near the ancient soul restriction. Just as his body appeared, the black fog began to move and two ghostly eyes appeared. At the same time, a ghostly wail came from inside the fog. Wang Lin's origin soul shook after hearing the wail, so he quickly backed up. He stared at the black cloud and silently pondered. That roar just now was a warning. There must be a treasure if it requires a soul restriction to seal it. Wang Lin's eyes lit up. His expression became serious as his hand quickly moved. One illusion after another appeared and surrounded his body. Break! Wang Lin shouted, as he pointed at the black fog. The illusions around him transformed into a dragon and charged into the black fog. The two ghostly eyes were filled with anger and the fog began to move. Then came a roar even more impactful than the last. The roar entered Wang Lin's soul and he immediately felt pain coming from the cracks on his origin soul. Wang Lin quickly backed up with a gloomy expression. Just at this moment, the black fog began to move even more violently and rapidly shrank. All of the black fog condensed at the center. In the blink of an eye, the black fog had condensed into a beast. The moment the beast appeared, Wang Lin could see that there was a small, golden flag inside the fog. The black fog came from this flag. The beast landed on the ground. With its head facing Wang Lin, it opened its mouth and stared at Wang Lin with a ghostly gaze. The illusionary restrictions Wang Lin shot out earlier were all still flashing on the body of the beast. The beast waved its head and shot two streams of hot air out of its nose. Then it looked at Wang Lin and suddenly charged toward him. Chilin? Without any hesitation, Wang Lin disappeared. The beast missed. It looked into the distance and let out a roar. The roar traveled toward the spirit veins but was blocked by a gentle force after 1,000 feet. The beast let out a few more angry roars before turning back into black fog and disappearing back into the small, golden flag. Wang Lin appeared in a spirit vein more than 1,000 feet away. He frowned slightly as he looked back at where the black fog was. It's not a Chilin, but it is similar to the Chilin that Ling Qianhu had back in the celestial realm. That small, golden flag must be a treasure of the soul refining sect. That beast is the guardian of the flag as well as one of the souls inside it. It looks like the method to making the soul flag of the soul refining sect is closely related to the ancient soul restrictions. Only, I don't know what the exact methods are. Wang Lin's eyes sparkled as he pondered. This beast's power is around that of an early-stage soul formation cultivators. My cultivation hasn't recovered yet, so I'm in no rush to capture it. Wang Lin pondered a bit before going back to cultivate. After seeing Liumi, the feeling of danger Wang Lin felt towards Suzaku appeared once more. It was very bad that Liumi was able to find him. He secretly thought about it for a long time but still couldn't figure out her motive. He also couldn't see through her cultivation, which was why he didn't kill her earlier. All of this is very strange, and Suzaku's decisions makes no sense. If it comes down to it, I'll just leave Suzaku, go find Qian Yanzi, and leave this mess behind. Wang Lin began to ponder. Time quickly passed. In the blink of an eye, several more months had passed. When he first arrived, the area outside of Wang Lin's cave was filled with wild grass and was rather bleak. After all, the place he chose was too remote. But now there wasn't any wild grass, and someone had even planted flowers with great fragrance nearby. All of the rocks were cleared away and replaced with smoothly cut stone. There were even a few stone canopies scattered around. Someone even made a pool at the center with small, golden fish living in there that would occasionally create ripples. This gave the area fairyland-like aura. Shuyun and Liu Wei were sitting under one of the canopies with a plate of fruit before them. They were chatting with each other and would occasionally look toward the door of the cave. Liu Wei's brow trembled as she said, "Senior apprentice sister Shuyun, do you think that when senior apprentice brother Qianmu comes out, he will hate us for doing all of this without his permission?" Liu Wei was one of the two girls from earlier. She had a small body and was a head shorter than Shuyun, but her body was very beautiful and very exquisite. That shouldn't be the case since every cultivator likes a good environment. We made this place this beautiful, even if he doesn't display any happiness on the surface, he won't be angry. Junior apprentice sister Liu Wei, relax. Shuyun smiled as she picked up a fruit and took a bite. Liu Wei revealed a look of joy and said, "In these past few months, senior brother Qingmu's reputation has been spread by us sisters, so our lives have been much better. If this can continue, it would be great. I managed to collect more broken souls in these past few months than I did in a year before." Shuyun nodded and said, "Without talent, as long as no one steals from us, we can definitely make 100-soul flag. Then we can use that to cultivate and reach the late stage of core formation for sure." Liu Wei whispered, "Senior apprentice sister, I'm still a bit worried because we are getting more and more visitors every day. If Senior Qingmu finds out that it is us causing all of it, he might not let us off easy." "He shouldn't." Before Shuyun could finish speaking, a ray of red light suddenly descended from the mountain's peak and landed before the entrance of the cave. The light revealed a very handsome middle-aged man. His long hair flowing in the wind gave off the feeling of a celestial. "Junior apprentice brother Qingmu, I'm Guodong Jian. I hope we can talk." Shuyun stood up and said, "Senior apprentice brother Guodong, please go back. Senior apprentice brother Qingmu is still in closed-door cultivation." Guodong Jian frowned. He turned to look at Shuyun and asked, "The two of you are Qingmu's concubines?" Liu Wei's face turned red and she didn't say a word. Shuyun's expression remained normal as she said, "Senior apprentice brother, we are indeed senior apprentice brother Qingmu's concubines." Guodong Jian's eyes became cold and he shouted, "What a bunch of nonsense. It's fine if you wish to fool others, but you dare to fool me. The two of you, scram." With that, he turned around and raised his hand. A ray of spiritual energy shot out from his hand, turned into the shape of a dragon, and charged toward the cave. The moment the dragon appeared, the wind began to howl. When the dragon collided with the door of the cave, the restriction on the door flashed, stopping the dragon, and at the same time a giant hand appeared. The giant hand caught the dragon and squeezed it. The dragon let out a miserable howl before shattering. Guodong Jian's expression changed. He backed up several steps and stared at the cave. Wang Lin slowly walked out of the cave. When the sunlight hit Wang Lin, one could see black gas. The black gas slowly gathered behind him to form a giant skull. Thousand-soul flag illusion. Guodong Jian's expression changed again and he backed up even more. Wang Lin's eyes calmly scanned Guodong Jian. This person's cultivation level was at the early stage of nascent soul. "Surrender your soul flag and I'll let you leave." Wang Lin's voice was calm. Guodong Jian's expression turned gloomy as he took out a small flag with 2 golden lines on it. He shook the flag and one by one soul fragments flew out of the flag. They surrounded Guodong Jian and roared at Wang Lin. He muttered as he took a few steps back and said to Wang Lin, "I also have a 1,000-soul flag. If you can win, I'll hand it over." The soul fragments around him suddenly charged toward Wang Lin. Some of those soul fragments were at the foundation establishment stage and others were at the core formation stage. There was even one that had grown limbs and gave off the aura of a nascent soul cultivator. Wang Lin remained calm. He pointed with his right hand and said, "Vortex." As he spoke, the soul fragments charging at him all let out a miserable screams and were sucked in by the vortex. Soon, all of the soul fragments besides the one giving off the nascent soul aura disappeared. The soul fragment with the nascent soul aura let out a scream and then used some method unknown to Wang Lin to escape the vortex. It quickly tried to escape into the distance. "What's this?" Wang Lin's eyes lit up. He reached out and the soul fragment let out another miserable scream as it was caught. Wang Lin looked at this soul fragment and then at Guodong Jian. "Where did you get this nascent soul fragment?" Guodong Jian secretly sighed. When he saw Wang Lin use the soul vortex, he had already given up on resisting. "Senior apprentice brother Qingmu, congratulations on being the 3rd person in the soul refining mountain to master the soul vortex. As for the nascent soul fragment, I traded a 900 soul flag along with the soul extracting mountain soul flag production manual for it. In these 3 months of closed-door cultivation, with the help of the spirit vein, Wang Lin was able to break through past the nascent soul stage. All he needed to do now was reform his origin soul, and then his cultivation level would return to the soul formation stage. There were only 3 T marks left on his face, and Sun Tai's seal was on the verge of breaking. Compared to all of this, his greatest achievement was that he found out that the entire soul refining sect was covered by something invisible. This invisible thing covering the sect would occasionally release soul fragments, and then hundreds of different spiritual energies would come out to fight for them. These soul fragments didn't always appear in the same place, they were scattered across every part of the soul refining mountain. After noticing this, his heart was moved. He quickly took out the soul flag manual, and then, after checking it for a while, he was able to see through some secrets. The 3 methods to refine the soul flag were split into soul refining, soul extracting, and soul sealing. Soul refining was a method to refine any soul fragment in the world and to seal it inside a flag so that it will grow instead of dissipate. Soul extracting was different. It couldn't refine soul fragments, it could only extract the soul from a living person and seal it inside a soul flag to control. As for the final one, soul sealing, Wang Lin didn't have anything to compare it to and was a bit confused. According to the soul refining mountain, the soul flags were in rank tens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, and so on. The more souls a flag contained, the more powerful it was. 10 and 100 soul flags were very common, but once a soul flag gained 1,000 souls, it could use certain spells and its power would depend on the primary soul. In order to make 1,000 soul flag, one had to have a primary soul. This was a limiting factor that made 1,000 soul flags quite rare. Many hundred soul flag had reached the limit of 999 souls, but without a primary soul, it couldn't become 1,000 soul flag. There was only one requirement for a primary soul, and that was that it had to be stronger than all of the other souls in the soul flag combined. While Wang Lin studied the soul flag, he thought about the Chilean deep under the sect. That beast had to be that golden soul flag's primary soul. Wang Lin had collected a large amount of soul fragments throughout these 3 months of cultivation. For some reason, these soul fragments had gathered inside the spirit vein. When Wang Lin checked the spirit vein for the first time, they weren't there. Someone had clearly just collected them just before he checked. As he collected the soul fragments, he understood where all of the soul fragments in the spirit vein went. They were all absorbed by the soul flag underneath the sect. A person and a flag began to steal soul fragments from each other. However, the flag was locked in one place and wasn't as agile as Wang Lin. In the past 3 months, almost 90% of the soul fragments were taken by Wang Lin. There were strong and weak souls among these soul fragments. During these 3 months, Wang Lin found one that was at the early stage of nascent soul and used it as his primary soul. Not many nascent soul fragments appeared, only about 2 or 3 a year. Every time one appeared, the top disciples of the soul refining sect would fight over it. Guo Dongjian's words moved Wang Lin. It was just as he thought, the disciples of the soul extracting mountain extracted souls from bodies to seal into their flags. He decided that he had to find some time he get himself the soul flag production method of the soul extracting mountain and study it. As for the soul vortex, it was one of the 3 techniques inside the soul flag manual. The 3 techniques were condense, soul vortex, and blood sacrifice. Condense was rather simple. Although there were only 10 jades in the soul refining peak, many had made copies of this technique to sell. This technique was based on soul refining. With this technique, one could make the ethereal soul fragment take form and put it inside a soul flag. Soul vortex was a very rare technique. At least this was the case in the soul refining mountain. It required at least nascent soul level cultivation to learn, but not all nascent soul cultivators could learn it. For example, Guo Dongjian still hadn't managed to learn it. Once this technique was used, it would absorb a large amount of souls. Whether it was used for fighting or stealing souls, it was extremely powerful. The final technique was blood sacrifice. Using this technique would increase the power of the soul flag by several fold. 1/3 of the reason why the soul refining sect had so few disciples yet was so powerful was due to this technique. However, this technique was very difficult to cultivate. Even most of the late-stage nascent soul disciples hadn't been able to learn it. Wang Lin waved his hand and the soul vortex disappeared. He took out a soul flag and then a large amount of soul fragments were absorbed by it. Duo Dongjian's expression was very ugly. It had taken him years of hard work to gather all of those soul fragments, and they were stolen just like this. After letting out a sigh, he could only bitterly smile. This was the rule of the soul refining sect. He came here to steal Wang Lin's soul flag, but his was taken instead. He let out another sigh, clasped his hands at Wang Lin, and left feeling depressed. Wang Lin put the nascent soul he had caught into his soul flag. It soon began to fight with the nascent soul that was already inside. Wang Lin no longer looked at the flag. He knew that the winner would become the new primary soul and the loser would become the winner's underling. Shuyun and Liu Wei's hearts were pounding as they silently stood to the side. Although Shuyun looked confident before, she never would have thought that this senior brother Qingmu would manage to master the soul vortex. Wang Lin looked around. This place was very elegant and contained a certain appeal. Wang Lin calmly and slowly said, "I'll drop the matter of the two of you changing the surroundings of my cave. You two, leave quickly." Shuyun revealed a pleading expression and said, "Senior apprentice brother Qingmu, the two of us won't bother you. If we leave now, the soul fragments we worked so hard for will be stolen. The two of us only want a safe place to cultivate. We definitely won't cause you any trouble." Wang Lin didn't speak, but his eyes became cold. Shuyu's heart trembled when that gaze fell on her. Liu Wei was already timid, and at this point she couldn't hold it in anymore, so she started crying. Liu Wei was very talented. She reached the mid-stage of core formation relatively quickly. Then, during an outer disciple competition, she gave it her all and became an inner sect disciple. But after entering the inner sect, it wasn't what she expected at all. The inner sect was a place of the strong devouring the weak. It was far too different from what she expected a cultivation sect to be. Wang Lin frowned. He waved his sleeves and was just about to throw these two out when he suddenly raised his head and stared at the sky. A green figure that looked like a fairy descended from the sky and landed 100 feet before Wang Lin. Liu Mai? After seeing this woman, Wang Lin frowned even harder. Liu Mai let out a faint smile and said, "Brother Qingmu has recovered most of his cultivation. That calls for celebration." The moment Liu Mai spoke, Wang Lin pointed to the air, causing Shuyun and Liu Wei to faint. "Liu Mai, just get to the point. There is need to pretend. You're only ruining the past image I had of you." Wang Lin stared at Liu Mai. His voice was cold. Liu Mai looked at Wang Lin. She let out a sigh and said, "Wang Lin, a great calamity is about to befall upon you. Go, leave planet Suzaku." Wang Lin's expression remained calm. He didn't say anything as he waited for Liu Mai to finish. Liu Mai whispered, "I won't lie to you. You already know that I'm someone from the country of Suzaku, but I'm not an ordinary disciple. My master is the #1 cultivator in Suzaku, Shu QZ." Wang Lin's eyes lit up. Everything in his mind suddenly became clear, and he asked, "What happened to Red Butterfly after her battle with me?" After listening to Liu Mai, he suddenly made a connection and came to a terrifying conclusion. Liu Mai revealed a hint of appreciation. She looked at Wang Lin and said, "Red Butterfly was killed by my senior apprentice brother." Wang Lin sucked in a breath of cold air. After confirming his speculation, he said, "It looks like my battle with Red Butterfly was only a dogfight to certain people." Liu Mai bit her lower lip and whispered, "Brother Wang, you should leave. The sooner the better." She looked at Wang Lin meaningfully, let out a sigh, and left. As Liu Mai left, she let out a sigh and thought, "Wang Lin, Liu Mai was ordered by Master to leave my mark on your Dao heart. This is a fate Liu Mai can't resist. I can't disobey Master's order. Unless your shadow appears in my Dao heart, there is no way for me to lose this battle between our Dao hearts." Only I, Liu Mai, comprehended the thousand fantasy ruthless domain and showed emotions on the surface while my heart remained ruthless. How could you win? In her eyes, there was a hint of ruthlessness, but it was hidden by her acting. Wang Lin was still frowning as he looked at Liu Mai's back. Although Liu Mai seemed to have pointed out the problem, it also left countless uncertainties. Wang Lin frowned again and muttered to himself, "This whole thing is strange. I keep having this weird feeling about Liu Mai. Strange." Shortly after, he looked at Shuyun and Liu Wei. He waved his hand and moved the two women 1,000 feet away from his cave. As he was moving them, his heart started trembling as if he had suddenly remembered something. His right hand reached out and pulled the two women back. Their expressions while passed out were very different. Yu Zun's earlier expression was very strong and determined, and she was talking for the other girl. But now that she was asleep, her expression showed a hint of weakness and helplessness. Wang Lin's earlier impression of the other woman was that she was very weak. However, now her expression was very determined and ruthless. She was clearly one of those that appeared to be weak but was in fact very strong on the inside. Wang Lin felt like lightning had struck his brain and his eyes sparkled. He looked up toward where Liumi went and sneered. Now I understand why I get this strange feeling every time I see Liumi. Although she shows all these emotions like she cares, she's actually using it to hide her true ruthless nature. This video will end here.